You can earn $150,000 a year in Australia right now and still feel one bad month away from stress. A decade ago, that kind of salary sounded rich. Today, for many Australians, it feels like survival with better branding. Because this is the part nobody talks about anymore. A good salary is not what it used to be, and millions of Australians are finding that out in real time. You get the raise. The bigger paycheck hits your account. For a moment, it feels like you finally made it. Then the mortgage comes out. Rent jumps again. Groceries cost more than last month. Insurance rises. Electricity rises. Fuel rises. And suddenly that good income starts feeling strangely average. So what's happening here? How can people earning $100,000, $120,000, even $150,000 still feel financially squeezed? Today, I want to show you the real reason. Because this is bigger than bad budgeting. Australia changed financially faster than most salaries did. And once you see the numbers clearly, you'll understand why earning more money no longer automatically feels like wealth. Let's start with something most Australians massively underestimate: how expensive normal life became. Right now, the average full-time salary in Australia sits a little above $100,000. Sounds strong, right? But after tax and Medicare, that drops to roughly $75,000 take-home, about $1,440 a week. Now watch how fast that disappears. If you're renting in Sydney, median unit rent is pushing around $760 a week. Stop there for a second. More than half your after-tax income is already gone. Before groceries, before electricity, before transport, before insurance, before your phone bill, before you've enjoyed a single thing. And if you own a home, for many people, the pressure feels even worse, because interest rates completely changed the equation. A huge number of Australians rolled off ultra-low fixed rates into repayments hundreds, sometimes thousands, higher every single month. Someone with a $750,000 mortgage can easily be paying $1,500 to $2,000 more per month than they were just a few years ago. Think about how aggressive that shift is. That's not luxury spending. That's survival costs exploding. And this is where the psychological trap begins. Because your salary sounds high. You tell someone you earn $120,000 and they assume you're wealthy. But in major Australian cities, that income often buys a middle-class life under pressure, not luxury. You have enough money to function, but not enough to fully relax. And that feeling matters more than people realize. Because financial stress is not just about paying bills. It's about whether your life feels like it's moving forward. And for a lot of Australians right now, it doesn't. They're running harder just to stay in the same place. But here's where this gets even more dangerous. Comparison. Australians are surrounded by visible wealth. Homes, cars, holidays, investment properties. And social media amplifies all of it. You see everyone else's highlight reel, while privately stressing over your own cash flow. So even if you're objectively doing well, you still feel behind. And then there's property. This changed everything. Because Australia basically split into two financial realities. There are people who bought homes before 2020, whose net worth exploded almost passively. And then there are people trying to enter the market now, facing million-dollar median house prices. The gap between those two groups can become millions of dollars, even on similar salaries. And this is why salary alone no longer tells the full story. Someone earning $90,000 with a paid-off house can feel far wealthier than someone earning $180,000 with a massive mortgage, because income creates cash flow, but assets create freedom. That distinction changes everything. Now here's the statistic that confuses people most. Australia's average household net worth sits around $1.66 million. Sounds incredibly wealthy. But look closer. Most of that wealth is trapped inside property and superannuation. And this is the key point. You cannot buy groceries with your house valuation. You cannot pay your electricity bill with your super balance. So, statistically, people look wealthy. Emotionally, many feel squeezed. And then, inflation made all of this worse. This is the part people underestimate most. Inflation doesn't just raise prices. It destroys the feeling of progress. 5 years ago, a $100,000 salary sounded impressive. Today, for many Australians, it feels normal. Not because people became greedy, but because essentials exploded in price. Groceries climbed, insurance climbed, electricity climbed, fuel climbed, rent climbed, but wages did not keep pace fast enough. So people got raises without gaining real purchasing power. They earned more money, but often lived the exact same life, sometimes worse. And this creates a cycle that quietly traps people, because when people finally start earning more, they immediately expand their lifestyle. A better apartment, a nicer car, more subscriptions, more financed purchases. Not always because they're irresponsible, sometimes because they're exhausted. They want relief. They want to finally feel successful. But lifestyle inflation quietly consumes the exact gap that creates wealth. And that gap, the difference between what you earn and what you keep, is the entire game. Two Australians can both earn $150,000. One spends $145,000. The other spends $90,000 and invests the rest consistently. 10 years later, their lives barely resemble each other. One still feels trapped despite the high income. The other owns assets, generates passive income, and has options. This is why some high earners feel broke forever. They upgraded their lifestyle faster than they upgraded their balance sheet. And here's the dangerous part. High incomes can actually hide financial problems. Because once you earn good money, banks offer bigger loans. Dealerships offer better cars. Credit becomes easier. So people slowly build lifestyles that require the salary to continue forever. Which means even strong incomes start feeling fragile. And fragile finances create anxiety, even at 6 figures. Now let's talk about the emotional side of this. Because many Australians secretly feel guilty for feeling stressed on a good salary. They think, I earn more than most people. Why do I still feel behind? But the reality is, modern Australian life became extremely expensive, especially in major cities. Housing alone changed the entire equation. The old idea of a good salary was built for a completely different economy. Different housing prices, different interest rates, different living costs. Today, financial comfort requires more than income. It requires assets, low debt, strong habits, and time. And this is the part most people miss. The goal is not just earning more. It's creating margin. Margin in your finances. Margin in your schedule. Margin in your stress levels. Because real wealth is not buying more stuff. It's reducing pressure. The Australians who feel financially secure usually are not the loudest spenders. They're the people who built breathing room. They invested consistently, avoided unnecessary debt, and protected the gap between income and lifestyle. Because eventually, that gap turns into freedom. So if you're earning good money right now, but still feel financially squeezed, you're not imagining it. Life genuinely became more expensive. But at the same time, do not fall into the trap of believing higher income alone solves everything. Because without controlling spending, without investing, without building assets, even very high salaries can disappear faster than people think. The people who eventually feel wealthy are not always the highest earners. They're usually the people who kept enough of what they earned long enough for their money to finally start working harder than they do. And once that happens, everything starts feeling different. If this changed the way you think about income and wealth, subscribe, because the next financial shift hitting Australians is already beginning.